If ever you want to stir up a group of people, I know exactly how to do it. Say the words prairie dog. I know it sounds unbelievable, but the mere mention of a 2-pound rodent can arouse a vehement response. It seems that people in the West either really hate prairie dogs or really like them, with no middle ground. Unfortunately for prairie dogs, their most ardent adversaries, namely land developers and ranchers, spend considerable time and resources pressuring legislators and land managers to promote prairie dog extermination. Hi, I'm Lynn Barrett, and I'm interested in using positive experience to transform attitudes about prairie dogs from negative to positive. I know that I will never change the perspectives of powerful land developers and ranchers, but I can influence the legislators, and I aim to shift the perspectives of city council members in Fort Collins. So why do I care about the perspectives of city council members? My regard stems from a casual conversation with my neighbor. He's a home builder, and he's built homes across much of the Front Range. One day, during conversation, I asked him what he thought about the destruction of trees and wildlife that occurred during excavation of huge tracts of land for housing developments. He told me that he felt no compunction about it, because land zoning and development approvals were the prerogative of county commissioners and city officials, and as long as they approved construction proposals, then he was going to excavate and build, no matter what. As for the city council members of Fort Collins, I'm focusing on them because they have considerable authoritative jurisdiction. They are the city's legislative body, and therefore enact city ordinances and provide policy direction to city staff like city planners and land zoning officers. I'm focusing on them because they recently became a paragon for other city councils to model. 9 months ago, the City of Fort Collins City Council authorized reintroduction of highly endangered black-footed ferrets onto 2 municipal natural areas. Because ferrets require large numbers of prairie dogs for food and shelter, and because the City of Fort Collins is the first municipality to engage in ferret reintroduction, it has become a paragon of prairie dog stewardship and not extermination. Unfortunately, not everyone applauds prairie dog stewardship, and special interest groups will pressure council members to control prairie dog numbers, aka exterminate prairie dogs. To prevent council members from caving to the pressure, one must work proactively to ensure that the majority of council members harbor attitudes toward prairie dogs that are positive and not negative. To kindle City Council's positive attitudes, I propose to take them on a one-day, adventure-based, adult experiential education event, akin to O'Bannon's and McFadden's model of experiential andragogy. In other words, I plan to take City Council members on a field trip, and the outing will include orientation, involvement, activity, reflection, adaptation, and motivation. The field trip will begin and end in Fort Collins, in the parking lot of City Hall, and include 4 stops. It will commence on a Friday morning in May, when the 8 City Council members board a small passenger van equipped with a portable TV screen and don wireless headsets. During the 45-minute drive to a prairie dog relocation project in Westminster, Colorado, council members will watch informative videos like this one.
Strangest things they encountered was the diminutive rodent called the prairie dog. Living in what looked like enormous towns, the prairie dog was present in what seemed to be uncountable numbers. Indeed, later explorers reported riding for days through vast assemblages of these animals. They must have numbered in the tens, if not hundreds of millions. As part of a delicately balanced prairie ecosystem, the prairie dog was intimately connected to dozens of other species, including the vast bison herds that once roamed the plains. With the settling of the West, the bison, prairie grasslands, itself nearly succumbed. Today, the prairie dog is faced with an end threat, the loss of habitat and development. Although it survived the first pass of the bulldozers, this home, the other homes, and the community that once thrived here will succumb in a matter of days, if not hours, to the relentless force of human development. Progress is not defined by the advance of the bulldozer or the allocation of our vast open spaces solely to grazing by domestic animals. It is defined in the harmony and balance of nature, in the diversity of life that surrounds us, and in the humane treatment of other living things. We can share this space with all living things and live in harmony with our wild neighbors. Prairie dogs were showing us that way when we first walked on the lands of the West, and we ignored them then. Now it is time to live. How can you live with your wild neighbors? I'm John DeDuke.
Before I tell you more about the field trip, I want to go back to the O'Bannon and McFadden model of experiential andragogy and talk about motivation. For this group of city council members, I anticipate that the level of motivation to learn about prairie dogs will be high and mostly intrinsic. After all, these are the same city council members who unanimously approved the reintroduction of black-footed ferrets and then celebrated their release. They're probably still jazzed from the excitement. But very soon, though, these council members will begin to cycle out of office, and new council members, who probably harbor negative feelings about prairie dogs, will cycle in. And in 4 years, this current panel of city council members will completely turn over. As council members cycle in and out, the level and type of motivation will change from high intrinsic motivation to high extrinsic motivation. In other words, in the future, I probably will have to work considerably harder to convince city council members to take this field trip. Okay, so getting back to the field trip. After 45 minutes of watching videos and talking about prairie dogs, their activities, and their keystone role in the ecosystem, the van will make its first stop. This will be at an active construction site like the one pictured here, where council members can observe the callous destruction of prairie dogs and their homes. The purpose of this stop is to jar the council members to think back on land development proposals they approved while in office and cogitate the impact of their decisions. This is the point at which I will interject the verity that prairie dogs and other wildlife do not have to die for the sake of land development. They can be humanely relocated instead. This stop on the field trip comprises the orientation portion of O'Bannon's and McFadden's model of experiential andragogy. What they see at this stop, abridged with the verities I interject, will orientate council members to their connections to prairie dogs. Ultimately, this stop is designed to set the stage to shift the way that city council members think about prairie dogs. Next, we will travel 15 minutes down the road to a prairie dog release site. A release site is a safe haven onto which imperiled prairie dogs are relocated. The thing about release sites is that most are not prairie dog ready. They do not have prairie dog burrows. And the thing about prairie dogs is that they must have prairie dog burrows in order to survive. You can't just dump prairie dogs onto a field and take off. You have to build starter homes for them. And so, building prairie dog starter homes is exactly what city council members will do while on the release site. For a couple of hours, they will build nest boxes out of quick tube cardboard concrete forms and attach black drainage pipes to the nest boxes. The nest boxes serve as the prairie dogs' underground houses, and the black pipes provide passage from above ground to the houses underground. Next, council members will help dig trenches with an auger and plant the nest boxes underground. When totally covered up, only the end of the black tubes will remain above ground. Ultimately, the city council members will have helped to build a man-made prairie dog town alike that of a prairie dog-made prairie dog town. Referring back to O'Bannon's and McFadden's model, the enterprise of building prairie dog homes constitutes the involvement and activity portions of experiential andragogy. This stop on the field trip, alike the next stop, is designed to immerse and engage City Council members in the learning experience. As Council members leave the release site and ride a few minutes to the next stop, I will engage them in dialogue wherein they reflect upon their experiences at the release site. On the next stop, Council members will visit a capture site. A capture site is exactly as its name implies. It's where you catch the prairie dogs you intend to relocate. Most capture sites are parcels of land slated for residential or commercial development. While on the capture site, Council members will watch experienced wildlife relocators catch prairie dogs in have-a-heart traps and by water flush. Catching prairie dogs by water flush is my favorite part of the trip. You pump a solution of water and ivory dish soap into burrows and wait for the prairie dogs to emerge. Then you grab them up and towel them off. The water forces the prairie dogs above ground, and the soap suds disorient them. It's best to use ivory dish detergent because it's mild and does not sting the eyes as much as other brands. The other way to catch a prairie dog is by have-a-heart trap. On a very good day, you catch 2 at a time. A few hours later, Council members will return to the release site and release the prairie dogs they caught. Remember the tubes sticking out of the man-made prairie dog town? They are fitted with wire cages called nest caps. The nest caps keep the prairie dogs contained while they acclimate to their new location. At this point, the field trip will be nearly over, and there will be just one more stop to make. At that stop, Council members will visit a 3-year-old man-made prairie dog town. Here's a picture of that town. It's a balanced prairie ecosystem that supports multiple species of prairie wildlife. Okay, so that's not really what our man-made prairie dog town looks like. This is what it looks like. And here's a close-up of one of those man-made burrows. Clearly, the prairie dogs have adopted this artificial burrow. They've built a mound around the black plastic pipe. And next door, as seen in this picture, they have moved away from their black pipe and added their own burrow. That's a good sign. It means that the prairie dogs are getting on with life in their new home. Like in this picture, relocated prairie dogs are gathering nesting materials and traveling between burrows. Notice the path between the burrows in this picture. And while these relocated prairie dogs are doing what prairie dogs do, other animals are making themselves at home too. Here's a prairie rattlesnake and a pretty meadowlark. Both of them live on this man-made prairie dog town. This particular relocation project was a success. And this is the point at which I remind City Council members that 3 years earlier, these relocated prairie dogs were slated to die a horrible death so that their land could be developed into a strip mall. That poignant note should bring Council members full circle. And by full circle, I am referring to O'Bannon's and McFadden's model of experiential andragogy and the way that, over the course of this field trip, Council members will have orientated to the reality of their impact on prairie wildlife, engaged in activities that were structured yet allowed autonomy in setting levels and types of involvement, reflected upon the sights and events of the field trip and extracted meaning from them, transformed their perspectives as a result of this experience, and if I have been successful, Council members now will be motivated to advocate relocation of prairie wildlife in lieu of lethal extermination. I aspire for this experiential learning event to promote individual personal growth, and while I intend for this field trip to spur Fort Collins City Council members to scrutinize and question their current ways of thinking and acting, I realize that this event may have a reciprocal effect. The Council members may increase my knowledge, expand my insight, and heighten my capacity to transform attitudes about prairie dogs from negative to positive.